The Orioles are not stopping yet. Talks continue to heat up for Dylan Cease and a pickup just a few days before pitchers and catchers report. Hello, everybody. I'm John Lieberman. This is Orioles Digest along with my buddy Cam. We are covering everything Orioles related as we get closer to pitchers and catchers reporting in, frankly, 4 days. 4 days away from that. Like, subscribe. We have so much news for you. An Orioles signing just a few days before pitchers and catchers reporting. It's a relief pitcher. And the Dylan Cease talks heating up. What would you trade for Dylan Cease? But, my friends, as always, let's start with the big news of the day. This man. You may or may not know who he is. His name is Dylan Coleman. He was released by the Astros in August. He's been looking for another team ever since. You'll notice he's in the Kansas City uniform, and that's because the last time he was on the mound for any, time, it was in 2023 with the Royals, and the numbers were less than, less than sterling. He walks a heck of a lot of guys. He reached rates of almost 20% of batters he faced. He walked. It was 22% in the minors. In 2024, we'll show you his stats. He only had one appearance, but definitely worth giving you a gander. And then we're going to get to all of those other things. Look at that on a Monday. There he is, Dylan Coleman. So he was in one game. He pitched an inning. He struck out somebody. He averages 9 walks per 9 innings. So you're probably saying, well, why do you pick up Dylan Coleman? Why do you bring him to Major League camp? Why do you bring this guy in? Well, what's the theme, my friends, been of this entire offseason? Depth. And the Orioles brass believe that Dylan Coleman has upside, pretty tremendous upside, if they can get his control under control. And it's a big if, but look, you got to look at the track record that the Orioles have in turning around pitchers. The one that just comes to mind, or taking a chance on pitchers also, the one that comes to mind is Alberto Suarez. I mean, look at him and look at what a fixture he became, in the rotation. But when you look at this Orioles bullpen, you can look at this in two ways, and I want to know your thoughts. Number one, continuing to bulk up the depth of the bullpen. Number two, are we preparing somebody in this rather lengthy list of relievers to trade for a top-notch starter? We're going to get to the latest in the Dylan Cease situation in just a minute, but you look at the bullpen and, you have Robinson Cano, a stud. You have, Cianel Perez. He needs to get his control under control, but certainly a good piece in the bullpen. You have Keegan Aiken. You have this man who we're all hoping, every single person in Baltimore and beyond has their fingers crossed that Félix Bautista, coming off of Tommy John, actually is the Félix Bautista of the past. And, of course, Andrew Kittredge as a huge pickup. Not to mention Sir Anthony Dominguez is still out there. Gregory Soto is still out there. So I would argue that we have one of the best bullpens in baseball going into spring training, which begins on Thursday. Now, what we need to get to is this. The Orioles are not stopping yet, making moves up until the end. Will they make a move for Dylan Cease? Because they just picked up Dylan Coleman, so they're still actively looking and searching, etc. Before we get to the latest move on the table, I think it's important to look at Dylan Cease's ace statistics because he is an ace. He would slot in as the number one starter for the Orioles, and he is the guy that you would want at that spot. He is a rental. We're going to get to that in a moment, but let's take a look at Dylan Cease's numbers. 33 games. He's a workhorse, just a shade over 189 innings, 224 Ks. Just spectacular. The mid-3 ERA, and just his current ERA plus, as you can see, is 118. He's 29 years old. He's in his prime. There's no doubt about that. So the question is, the latest offer on the table from the Padres appears to be a big no-go for the Orioles. So apparently the Padres were asking for Westburg, Basallo, and Mayo for a one-year rental of Dylan Cease. Now look, ridiculous, I say. There's no way in the world for a one-year rental the Orioles are giving up these three guys, not to mention Westburg's in the starting lineup. These other two will probably, if not make the major league roster, they'll be up soon enough. So the answer is, or the question is rather, what do you give up for Dylan Cease? What would the Orioles part with? And you may be saying that, look, trading anything for a one-year rental is bad business, bad baseball, but I may remind you just a year ago when the Orioles traded Joey Ortiz and DL Hall for Corbin Burns, that was a one-year rental, and that was a rental that, as we see, got the Orioles into the playoffs. It didn't get the Orioles deeper, but that's because of the bats. The bats were horrific down the stretch last year, and that's something that, with a new hitting coach, hopefully the Orioles can address. Coming back, though, so the Orioles do have a track record of making these last-minute moves for a one-year rental and giving up something. So I ask you, what would you give up for a one-year rental of Dylan Cease, who would slot right into the very top of your rotation? And my real question is, do you give up Heston Kjerstad? Do you give up Heston? It's a very crowded outfield. Heston will slot in. He'll make the major league team. He'll come off the bench. Would you put Heston in a deal for Dylan Cease? It would have to be a Heston +1. It would be a Heston plus maybe a Kobe Mayo. That's a lot to give up, but it's going to be a Heston +1 in order to land Dylan Cease. So, do you make that deal? Pitchers and catchers report on Thursday. As we just reported, the Orioles are still making moves. Dylan Coleman is the latest bird. He will most likely start the year in the minors, but he'll be at spring training, and they'll be looking at him for a spot, and we'll be looking at him too. Please like, subscribe. We're on top of all the news, and we'll see you soon.